races that produce some 3-year-olds to keep our eyes on moving forward. So a little review of that action, some preview of the Risen Star at Fairgrounds coming up this weekend. Also the Saudi Derby around the world. That's Saturday morning as well. All of that will be coming up after this break, so stay tuned.
The championship season is on at Gulfstream Park. Great horse racing action Thursday through Sunday. Come out and enjoy the world's best horses, trainers, and jockeys as they compete over the Hallandale Beach Oval all season long. Take your experience up a notch and join us in 10 Palms Restaurant with unbeatable track views, outstanding dining, and convenient wagering options. For reservations, event schedules, tickets, and more, head to GulfstreamPark.com.
Think horse racing is too complicated? Think again.
And they're off.
Every pro was a newbie once. Meet DRF Newbie, the mobile tool loaded with daily racing form data and the power of DRF AI. Get the insights you need fast so you can play smarter and feel more confident. DRF Newbie, horse racing made simple. Try it free today. Visit newbie.drf.com.
Want to get your career in horse racing off to a fast start? Well, the University of Arizona's Racetrack Industry Program is your winning ticket. The Racetrack Industry Program has served as a springboard to some of the industry's most successful individuals, with a proven track record of job placement right out of college. If you want to earn a degree in the exciting horse racing industry, the Racetrack Industry Program can put you in the winner's circle.
Happy to be joined now by our friend Jeremy Plonk. Does the great work that comes out every Friday, Countdown to the Crown, leading into the Triple Crown Series, previewing and reviewing 3-year-old action stakes and important allowance and maiden specials early on. It's fun, it's informative, it's worth checking out every Friday afternoon. Jeremy, good morning.
Good morning. It's good to be with you. And, it's starting to get serious now, right? We got 50 points on the line this week in the Risen Star. So now you're starting to get almost automatic qualifiers, if you will, to the Derby.
And as I mentioned, Countdown to the Crown, a lot of fun, comes out every Friday. Always like to give you a chance to remind people where to find that, and also talk a little bit about your podcast as well.
Sure. Countdown to the Crown. You can go to countdowntothecrown.com or go to horseplayernow.com and click on the Countdown link. Check it out there. On X, you can find me at horseplayernow. We'll link things up there as well. And on Substack is where the Countdown to the Crown is published and sent each week. So be sure to follow me on Substack, jeremy.plunk at Substack, and you can get it sent to your email inbox each and every week. I was piling up, Seth. I mean, for this week, we're over 5,000 words for a big week. There were 4 reviews from last week. We've got 2 or 3 big previews for this coming weekend. So this is a full Monty. We're over 2 million words in the last 21 years in Countdown.
Oh, wow. That's incredible. That's crazy. I respect people like you who know how many podcasts you do. I've been in here doing this show for a long time, and people say to me, how long you've been doing it? And I have to think about that. But how many? I would love to know how many I've done. I may have to go back and just make a rough count, or maybe I don't want to.
Those are off-season tasks, things you do when the racing season is not going.
Very good point. And again, also tout the podcast a little bit.
Yeah, I do a podcast each week called the First Call Podcast with Scott Shapiro. We handicap weekend stakes races. You can find that on my YouTube channel at Horseplayer Now. Be sure to subscribe there and get all the updated video handicapping analysis as well. We handicap 8 stakes races each and every week.
All right, let's jump in. And before we get to some of the review and preview and whatnot, I just wanted to go to your top 20. And I pulled it up from last week because as we take this week's isn't out yet. But on top of the list, you had Further Ado. And when we talked to you kind of kicking off our Derby Deep Dive show a few weeks back, you had Further Ado up the list, and you and I were both kind of pretty good horse, but he hadn't worked out yet. Subsequently, I had Brad Cox on, and he said didn't get out of Kentucky after the 2-year-old season in time, had a little bit of a setback, so it took him a while to get down to Florida. And it was really only a couple days after we talked that Further Ado did get back on the work tab down in Florida. Now it's had 3 workouts, including a best of 56 last Saturday down at Payson Park. You still latched on to Further Ado?
Well, I think he's going to run in the Tampa Bay Derby and then on to the Bluegrass, where he won at Keeneland by 20 lengths. That's where he got on my radar in that big win in the fall meet when he won by 20, then went to win the Kentucky Jockey Club. I still have him right up there in amongst the top horses. But as we've seen some of the others run a few times now, or at least once this year, there are a couple more. Of course, what we saw with Renegade last week, we'll talk about him in just a bit. You got to like what you've seen from him. Nearly's performances this year have been fantastic. So, I haven't lost anything in him, but I've just kind of like pointed forward with a few of the others right now. But, we had a fantasy draft the other night among some media members, and I had the third pick, and I didn't take him with the third pick. I ended up taking Paladin because he's running this week, and it's going to be a heavy favorite. And as you do fantasy points and things like that, you're more worried about horses that make it to the races and give you a chance to score. But it was like I was trying to figure out who is the top three and the absolute ones that you really want to lean into. If it means anything out there amongst the media league, Nearly went first, Brant went second, and then I took the horse there third in Paladin. Then I believe right behind was Renegade and so forth down the line. So that's kind of the way it shook out there. So if that gives people a little bit of sense of a consensus, maybe of what some media members are thinking, that's what happened this past week.
It's interesting, and we'll talk about most of those horses you just mentioned as they've raced recently and done very well. But one we haven't mentioned, and I am really interested to hear your take on this. We're going to take a look at the Withers from last week. And again, it was rescheduled to, there was a nice day on Friday last week, February 6th. The Withers was one of the big stakes, and they also had the Southwest down at Oaklawn last Friday. But the Withers, we'll take a look at the replay and talk to Jimmy. Gets to the lead and extends. The chart margin winds up to be 11 lengths. All of that said, Aqueduct has been very quirky and kind of front runners. It was a legitimate 83 buyer. And as I say, visually impressive. I came away, given the way the track's been playing, not sure what to make of it, but this is a talented New York bred for sure.
Yeah, he got out of the state bred ranks. He's by Modernist. He's not by some obscure stallion or anything like that. Modernist had success for Bill Mott in his racing days. Talk to me, Jimmy's a hard read, right? I mean, he didn't beat probably a whole lot in here. The final eighth of a mile was 1380, which is really slow for a mile and an eighth. And he's opening up on all the other horses. Nobody's making up any ground when they go 1380, the final furlong. Tells you nobody was running in behind him. But he did what he was supposed to do. He punched them out, or what he hasn't really had any misstep yet to this point. It's a wait and see with him. Let's see another one against better competition. The tricky part about the Naira series, though, is you go from the Jerome at a mile to a mile and an eighth in the Withers, back to a mile in the Gotham, and then the Wood Memorial at a mile and an eighth. So I don't know if they want to cut him back to running the Gotham at a mile, which would probably be an easier field, or extend or stay extended out to the mile and an eighth now and wait for the Wood, which would be a tougher field, obviously, than what we get in the Gotham. So they've got a tough decision to make there, Rudy Rodriguez and company, on what they want to do with the horse. I'm sure he stays home, though, and there's no reason to go anywhere. This was a really good effort. He just didn't beat much, and he didn't come home all that fast. Those would be the knocks, but, you're trying to, figure out where he fits. I still don't have him as a top 20 type horse. The Withers hasn't been a productive race really towards the Derby. We did see some horses from the Withers have a little success, like early voting to the Preakness. And honestly, maybe this is a Wood Memorial Preakness horse, and if he is a cut below, the Preakness is going to come up soft this year. I feel fairly confident in saying that. They're running at Laurel. It's not the traditional Pimlico Preakness. I kind of think, and what we saw last year with Sovereignty skipping the Derby to the Preakness, I just see that trend continuing a bit here, at least until the new Pimlico is built and everybody's excited to be back at the event. So I don't know. I say Wood and then Preakness might be the best path with a horse like this, and see what you can do. Maybe you become a classic winner through the back door.
I kind of like that thinking, because I think you're right. Rudy, a horse, he's such a New York guy, probably does stay on the New York path anyway. And it'd be interesting to see. Again, it was visually impressive, but the way the track's been playing, the 83 is an okay number, but I agree with you. What was behind him? So it is one of those, let's look at one more and then make a better judgment on him. All right, maybe a little more impressive field-wise and performance-wise, and certainly number-wise. The Southwest also a week ago on Friday. And I had Mark Cassie on, and we were talking about, he had a great weekend, but this one in the Martha Washington, his big gun didn't get it done in the Southwest Strategic Risk, who you had high up your list, and I had on top of my picks there, winds up running 10th in the field of 12. And the Martha Washington, counting stars, who looked like a star in the race prior, doesn't get it done, runs last in there. But his other horses win. And then, of course, he had the nice win with Nitrogen. So it was a big weekend for Mark Cassie. But on Friday with his other horses, we'll take a look at the stretch run. Silent Tactic, again, the other Mark Cassie at 12-1, gets it done with a nice 88 buyer. Decode, who went off as the favorite, may have proven to like sprints better. Decode winds up fading to 8th in here as the 2-1 favorite. But it was a nice performance from Silent Tactic. Your thoughts?
This race fooled me in a couple different ways. I thought when Silent Code originally won, I thought, okay, Decode was out there fast. He couldn't go that far. It was a meltdown race. He kind of plotted from the back of the pack and beat everybody. Kind of like sudden breaking news, if you remember that Donnie Von Hemel trainee from this path about 10 years ago, just kind of a come from behind, second tier kind of horse, but in the right setup could get something done like this. But then as I inspected the race a little further and went back, I started to be a little bit more impressed by this horse. I mean, I think he's better than sudden breaking news. This was a good effort from Silent Tactic. It was not a meltdown. This was not a fast pace. And if you look at the horses who ended up second, third, and fourth, they were in the mix throughout. So this horse really didn't get any pace help. They went a 6 furlongs in 1:12.4, and he rallies from last. You're doing it on your own when that happens, right? It's not everybody coming back. And again, if you look at the horses, Soldier and Diplomat, Blue Tane, Rancho Santa Fe, they were all in the mix throughout. The only horse who quit was the speedy Decode, stretching out from sprint to route. And when I watched the replay, originally when I watched the race and you kind of start to see, everybody coming, you think Decode just kind of dropped anchor. But when I went back and watched the replay, a step in front of the 8th pole, he's actually still in front, and so he's not going to get a 1.25 miles, and that kind of tells you he's not a Derby horse. But could he be a decent miler or something like that, and he develops a little more? He actually ran farther in the race than I thought. He stayed in the hunt longer, which, wasn't too bad for the second career start. Not what you expected if he was going to be a star and be a Derby horse, but he didn't actually just completely say, I've got to run 6 furlongs from here out. Be interesting to see what they do with him. But Silent Tactic did it without any help, and he did it nicely, and he came home fast enough. That was a decent performance coming home. 25 for the fourth quarter, 6:12 the last 16, which is trucking. That was a good come home time there. This was a decent effort. It's funny because we pick all the horses and their performances apart little by little, right? We're looking for a minuscule detail. You picked apart Mark Cassie with like the 2 horses he lost with all meet. They've run 11 stakes races with Mark Cassie horses in this meet. He won 7 of them. He's 7 for 11 in stakes, and in 2 of those, he ran 1-2. So of his 4 losses, 2 of them are running second to his own horses, So Cassie's had just an unbelievable run at Oaklawn right now, and no matter what he puts on the track, you got to follow, which just makes it even more puzzling. What in the world happened in here, with Strategic Risk? As good as he looked at Gulfstream, as good as he looked in the Smarty Jones, which to this point was the best race we saw anybody run as a 3-year-old this year, was his Smarty Jones, and he just went the other way. But remember this about the race, the Southwest. They were closed at Oaklawn the previous week. The race was pushed back a week. The track was closed from training for several days. Some of the local horses were okay with it, and some of them did not handle it whatsoever. Maybe that's the deal with Strategic Risk. And everybody's just kind of like, okay, well, he's done now after running as terrible as he did, because he ran 10th and he got beat, 10.5 lengths in there. Terrible performance. But maybe he's a horse who needs to train, and you got to stick with him. So be very interesting to see what all of these horses do next time with a regular training pattern.
I said the same thing the day after the race. I said, and Mark had mentioned it a number of times. We went over a bunch of the horses. He had Sandman coming back as well on the weekend. And we talked a little bit about, and Mark mentioned a number of times the training situation. He thought all of his horses were okay. And then people might say, well, didn't Silent Tactic sit in the same situation?
Right. Well,
I think some horses maybe can do it, and some horses need that training.
Exactly. I mean, it's just like athletes, right? So some guys will go out and take batting practice, take 3 swings, and go hit 2 homers that night, and other guys will be in the cage for an hour and a half and go 0 for 4. I mean, they're athletes, right? And some just train different than others. They are given the same scenario, right? Exactly. They all had the same hindrance of the training, but there's the physicality part of it, and physically, maybe one needs a little bit more than the other.
And I will also add, I hope somebody said to Christian Torres, there's $1 million up for grabs, but hold the celebration until after the wire. You got excited a little bit early there. You don't want to slip out of the stirrup 10 feet from the finish line in $1 million race. But it was a nice performance by Silent Tactic, no question. The next day over at Tampa, another step on the Derby Trail with the Sam Davis. And this one, another nice looking performance and a horse we've mentioned already, Renegade, getting it done in the Sam Davis with a solid 92 buyer. It's Todd Pletcher, it's Mike Rapoli. Now, the horse had finished under the wire first in a maiden race back in October, but was disqualified. Paladin was moved up. Those two came back in the Remsen. And as a technical maiden, Renegade ran second to Paladin. Paladin's coming up. We'll talk about him a little more coming up this weekend. But Renegade looking pretty good. In start number 4 gets the win in the Sam Davis, again, with a nice 92 buyer.
We just talked about it with the Oaklawn race about training patterns, right? And when you're on and you're on, and when you're off and when you're off. When they rematched back in the fall in the Remsen Stakes, the workout pattern was awful for Renegade. I think he had one work in between, maybe not even a work in between the 2 starts between those, while that Paladin was kind of training right back in session. He was not prepared for the Remsen Stakes. They ran him short in that race, and he only got beat a couple lengths at 1 1/8, which is an incredibly difficult distance. It was at that point where I said to myself, Renegade's a pretty darn good horse, because he should have been up the track in there based on how he had trained and the time that he missed in between that maiden race and between going ahead to the Remsen Stakes. So now that he got back on pattern, Pletcher got the customary 6 workouts in him that you want to see off a long layoff to come back for the new season. All the big trainers want to get 6 works out of their horses when they come back. He got that right on cue. Every 6-7 days, got the 6 works. And then when he comes here in the Tampa Bay race, outstanding performance. Best race of the year by a 3-year-old to me in a stakes race that we've seen so far on the trail. Wide, confidently handled in there by Irad Ortiz. Once again, did not get any pace help in here. The pacemaker goes all the way to run second in here. 6 furlongs again in 1:12.4. I mean, they're absolutely walking, and he just goes around everybody. Yeah. And if you want to see a horse level off and what they should look like in the stretch, it's this horse in this race. I thought that the finish here by Renegade was absolutely awesome. The head was down. He was reaching out all the way through the wire, leveling off, as they say. I mean, it's a textbook look of leveling off in here. It's a beautiful race. It was only 1 16, so it's an easy comeback race. But we've already seen him run well at 1 1/8. He's got a ton of pedigree. He's set, and they're going to run him one more time back in the Arkansas Derby, the way it sounds, and they'll get the 1 1/8 return trip there at a very productive race that's been good in the Triple Crown over the last couple decades at Oaklawn. So I think they'll get a good dress rehearsal out of that race. Renegade, to me, moves up. I mean, he moves really far up. He could be the number 1 3-year-old in the crop right now, based on the horses that have run so far this year. You still got to see Further Ado. You still got to see Brandt. You still got to see Paladin this weekend. But if anybody who's walked on a racetrack this year amongst the 3-year-olds, I don't think anybody ranks ahead of what Renegade's doing right now.
Yeah, he was definitely impressive in there. As I say, a 92 buyer, solid number, good comeback. And as you know, they were talking Arkansas Derby next with him. All right, out on the West Coast on Saturday, the Bob Lewis traditional path on the Derby Trail, whether it be Santa Anita Derby or beyond. And surprise, surprise, it's Bob Baffert with Plutarch getting it done. Florent Giraud on board. He's now basing himself out in Southern California, so it could start his move out to the West Coast. And it was a nice 90 buyer. And as I say, surprise, surprise, Bob Baffert wins. It was his 8th straight win in the Bob Lewis's 14th win overall in the stake, but gets it done at a surprising $10.20, but looked pretty good doing it.
He did. You know, this is a horse whose past performances were tough to figure out. He's run
Yeah.
3 times on turf as a 2-year-old. I mean, you just don't see that with Bob Baffert horses, especially the young ones. I remember Senior Swinger's a horse that he ran on the turf and ended up still trying to get to the Derby with him, but that's going back. That might be late 90s, early 2000s. You know, that might be like 2002, 2003. It's been 20 years since you've seen a Baffert horse with this kind of past performances as a 2-year-old into a 3-year-old and try to make a Derby horse out of him. He's got an impeccable pedigree. So the question is why was he running in those turf races? You know, he's by Into Mischief out of Stellar Wind. I mean, that's grade 1 dirt on grade 1 dirt. Typically, and we're always trying to guess and figure things out a little bit and read the tea leaves and read between the lines as we do in Countdown. And we're pretty good at this over the years, have a good track record. Typically, horses that are running on the turf that you don't think would be running on the turf are running there because they don't have the best feet, right? They have trouble with their hooves and they need a little bit softer and more forgiving ground. They want to run, the horses are fit, but they just got some feet problems. I'm guessing that this horse may have had some feet problems as a 2-year-old, and that's why we saw him on the turf. The other guesstimation on why he ran so long on the turf, he's owned by the Coolmore Group, right? This is Tabor Magner Smith with the Bob Baffert. Maybe they want to set him up for being an international stallion when he retires. They got a stakes win out of him on the grass. Maybe that was what they were trying to do and make him more valuable as a stud to the international market. One of the two, but it's very odd to see what he did resume-wise going into this race. I thought he was solid in here. The pace was, surprising because Desert Gate didn't break. And then when he had a chance with Juan Hernandez to come up the rail on the clubhouse turn and get up where he, probably should have been in the past performances, he either A, had nothing, or B, wasn't asked to go up through that hole. But he just decided, I'm going to wait, and I'm just going to sit here in third, fourth, and let the other horses go. So Plutarch ends up front with Intrepido, not the pace scenario we expected. And those two basically just slugged it out for the mile of the Lewis. We'll see. They got to go a mile and a 16th next time, a mile and an 1/8 in the Santa Anita Derby, and a mile and a quarter. Still a long way to go for some of these horses distance-wise, but we've seen Plutarch and Intrepido run well up to a mile and a 16th. Plutarch ran in a mile and an 1/8 on the turf. I think he'll be okay on distance. Again, the Into Mischiefs, if they've got a good amount of stamina on the dam side, can certainly do well in the Triple Crown series. So Plutarch was solid. I just didn't kind of see this race shaking out the way that it did. Intrepido remains a nice horse. I liked him a lot last year going into the American Pharoah. Then he wasn't training that great coming up to the Breeders' Cup Juvenile when I got cold on him. He didn't run well that day, and his comeback works here for this were like, I'd see one that I liked, and I saw one that was like, I saw one that I liked, So I wasn't sure what he was going to do in this race, and he actually came back in about the same spot that he left last year, which is a decent sign. I think Intrepido's decent enough. I wouldn't be shocked if you guys see him in New York. He might be a Wood Memorial horse, Intrepido. Remember back in the day, Jeff Mullins brought one of the Derby favorites to the Wood. I Want Revenge, was it? Back in the day from California, who also came out of this race. So could be a horse that hits the road at some point if you want to get away from some of that Baffert speed.
All right, and I want to hit on some others of interest and get your thoughts, because there was a race on the Sam Davis undercard that got a lot of buzz out on social media. We'll take a look at the stretch run maiden specials, and they are going a mile and 40. So debuting, going 2 turns. That's always notable. But it's going to be Chad Brown against Todd Pletcher in here, Klarovich against Rapoli. Number 2 will be Emerging Market. Number 3 will be Power Shift. Again, both first-time starters. Emerging Market winds up the winner in here with a 96 buyer. I mean, it was a pretty good-looking debut for the second-place finisher, Power Shift, as well. What was your takeaway from this race?
Yeah, I think it was 14 lengths back to the third place finisher. I mean, they dusted them. And look at the splits in this race, 23.71, 23.89, 24.89, 24.23, and then the last 40 yards. I mean, they were in a fourth quarter in 24-1. They're cooking against each other. They didn't give an inch. Really fast race. This is the son of Candy Ride. The dam is a half to She Be Wild, who was winner early, Breeders' Cup Juvenile Phillies winner, if you remember back in the day, for Wayne Catalano. So there's a win early part of this pedigree, but then there's also some class with that Candy Ride. So there's no reason why Emerging Market can't move forward. Of course, Power Shift's going to be 1-5 in a maiden race next time somewhere, and won't be a maiden very long, as I like to say. So Emerging Market, Chad Brown said afterwards that they would consider a race like the Louisiana Derby or the Wood Memorial with them, but they wouldn't rush to get there, was the way that he worded it in the racing press. So, a lot of this, as we say over the years, is who do you got in your barn for which races, right? I mean, Chad's got Paladin. He's got some other ones in there. You're going to have to see what he does with his other horses. And then will they need to run this horse in one of the Triple Crown races? That's kind of where we're at. Brown's got a pretty good hand to play, though, so far this year. He's got another horse in there, Canaletto, we'll talk about probably here in a minute or two. So where those horses go maybe determine how aspirational they get with this particular horse here. But what a nice win by Emerging Market. The Candy Rides love Keeneland, I'll just tell you that. And if this horse showed up in the Lexington at a mile and a 16th, he'd be awfully tough.
Yeah, as you say, Chad Brown, nice problem to have. Where do I put this 3-year-old or that 3-year-old?
Yeah, Lexington Preakness with a horse like this. Little later developer. Chad's gone that path, the Preakness with early voting by not running in the Triple Crown race. Of course, early voting went in the Wood. But I could see a Lexington Preakness path for a horse like this, while Chad has other horses maybe that he can work towards the Derby with.
Yeah, and his owners seem to go along with it. It has allowed him to be patient in previous years and pick probably the more proper spot. All right, I wanted to go back also and take a look a couple weeks back at some notables that we've already mentioned as well. Since the last time we've had you on, they ran the Holy Bull back on January 31st and nearly gets it done in here. Nearly John Velasquez, Todd Pletcher, win number 3 and start number 4. Broke the maiden 2 starts before the Holy Bull, then went into optional claiming non-winners of one company, got that done, then steps in and picks up a graded stakes in the Holy Bull. Nice looking performance for Nearly, and I think everybody thinks this is a player on the trail now.
Yeah, I mean, he's the king of Gulfstream right now, right? I mean, what a meet he's had, and even before the championship meet with that first win at Gulfstream. The field kind of went away in some respects. Butane didn't end up making the trip in there. Incredible didn't show up at all. And then Cannoneer was disappointing in his first time around 2 turns and couldn't finish in there. He'll get another shot somewhere in Cannoneer, but the horse who didn't have any questions was already very effective over the racetrack, and now nearly set up to bypass the Fountain of Youth and just wait for the Florida Derby at a mile and an eighth. And he's probably the closest horse to a Kentucky Derby starter right now as you're going to get. Yeah. He's 1 race away. It's going to come up in the Florida Derby, right in the same stall where he's at. Knock on wood, barring anything, unforeseen happening there. Of course, with Todd Pletcher and company, you got to really worry all the way up to Derby Day with some of his scratches. But this is the horse closest to the Derby right now, and Nearly's awfully good. Really not a lot of knocks. Didn't come home super fast in that race, but he's won 3 pretty convincing races now, and I don't think I don't think questioning him is probably the right move.
You're right. Cannoneer was a little bit of a disappointment in there, running 4th. Going to be interested. Those are the kind you want to see, and I'm going to be interested to see, because we've talked about some really nice performances over the past couple of weeks, and then we look at Strategic Risk, who had the and there was the season, what was it, 2 years ago, where that was the lead up season. Somebody would run a big performance, and then their next effort, they're like, and I'm hoping that isn't the case this year. I'm hoping some of these can go back to back, because they.
Can I mention one more horse on that undercard of the Holy Bull in the Swale Stakes? I know the winner in there is really good sprinter and Solitude Dude, and he won pretty handily. But the runner up in there, Class President, should have stopped. He was chasing a superior sprinter, and he kept coming and coming and coming and was running through the wire. He's bred the route. It's a Todd Pletcher for the folks at WinStar. Class President is a horse. If you want to get one right now that nobody's talking about as a Derby horse, he might be the Pletcher. I think he's going to go to Keeneland for the Bluegrass, and I think he's going to be really strong in there on a speed track, stretching back out. I think Class President is one right now under the radar. If you had to bet one, he's not. I don't think, is he listed on here? I'm scrolling through. He is on the Kentucky Derby future wager, 90-1 in the morning line for Mike Battaglia this weekend. If you want to make a bet in the Kentucky Derby future wager, class president, 90-1 this weekend.
I like that. I like not you pulled me in. All right, let's go back again to another horse that had a little buzz. This horse ran right after we had you on the last time, but it was in a maiden special, first time starter down at Gulfstream. Canaletto getting it done for Chad Brown, Magnier, and Tabor and company. And this is a sibling to Sandman, so already a little bit of note on the horse. Flavian Prat on board for Chad Brown, getting it done in a pretty good looking debut effort down at Gulfstream with an 89 buyer.
Yeah, I like this one a lot. This is as good a maiden winner as we've seen probably on the year. He really looks sharp. Canaletto for Brown. This is a horse who, beat Spartacus in here and ran Spartacus into the ground. That was a very much ballyhooed horse going into the debut for Todd Pletcher, and this was supposed to be a big showdown, and he just ran him into the ground, and he ended up the track. That's a good sign when you put a good horse away like that, and they back up. I like Canaletto quite a bit. I think he's a horse you got to keep your eye on. I'm not sure where Chad goes with him if he stays here at Gulfstream because, he's not running in a lot of the Gulfstream stakes, if you notice, with Chad Brown over the last couple of years. I was running some stats, and I'm like, wait a minute, this can't be right. He's only run, I can't remember what the number was, but it was a very small number of horses in Gulfstream stakes over the past year, and I'm thinking, geez, but so I wouldn't be surprised if Canaletto finds himself on the road somewhere. Maybe the Tampa Bay Derby would be a good spot for him going to the mile and a 16 off of that one-turn mile, kind of progressing more naturally. A lot will determine what happens with Paladin this weekend. I would assume Paladin, after the Risen Star, would be a horse that they look at probably for the Bluegrass. So this horse might go a different direction. Maybe Canaletto towards the Wood.
Speaking of Paladin, let's take a look. We've done some review. Now let's do a little preview on the weekend. The Risen Star coming up at Fairgrounds, mile and an 8 for the 3-year-olds. And we're going to take a look at Paladin winning the Remsen to wind up his season last year. This was start number 2, win number 2, placed first, as we mentioned earlier, by DQ in the maiden special with Renegade. Renegade subsequently flatters him with the win last week, but off the layoff, Chad Brown very good off the layoff. Paladin to me is very intriguing, but Golden Tempo has looked really good for Cherie DeVoe.
Yep.
Came out of the main breaker to win the Lecomte in a similar come from the clouds fashion. That is always impressive. I thought Carson Street for Brendan Walsh was interesting. Chip Poncho for Steve Asmussen. Todd Pletcher has Courting. If I'm looking for a price, Courting is interesting to me in there. But what are your thoughts in the Risen Star?
It looks like Paladin should be the horse, especially after what we saw from Renegade, on the return. As good as he looked down in the Sam F. Davis. And Paladin for Chad Brown doesn't look like they're messing around. The works are in company. He's on the inside of horses. Go to first.tv and check out a lot of the works from down at Florida for this horse. Chad's had him working on the inside of a rival throughout the course of the winter, and usually that means they're trying to get something out of him. I don't think this is a throwaway race. I think they want him to run well here. $500,000 purse, certainly not a knock. And remember, this is a gun runner colt, just like Sierra Leone coming out of the Remsen, and just like Sierra Leone coming down to the Risen Star for his first start of the year. And then they followed up a win in the Risen Star by going to Keeneland for the Bluegrass. I think they're just following the Sierra Leone path. And that worked out pretty darn well for Sierra Leone, almost in the Triple Crown Series, of course, and then ending with the Breeders' Cup Classic win at the end of his 3-year-old year. I think this horse is in that same kind of category. And Paladin can be as good as Sierra Leone and be that kind of discussion, then he'll win this race if he's that kind of horse. If he's not that kind of horse, then the locals, I think, are not clearly led by Golden Tempo because it was only 3/4 of a length margin last time and rallied up the inside, getting a fairly good trip in there. But I think that's the horse with the most upside. He's only run the 2 times. He's got all that Phipps pedigree, Carumba the mare, all that blue blood on the damn side of the pedigree that those horses just get better the longer they go. And as our late great friend Jeff Siegel used to say, the Curlins are only going to get better the more they run and the longer they go as well. So you just think Golden Tempo, we haven't seen anything close to what he could be. And he's 2 for 2. He won at 6 furlongs when he had no business winning at 6 furlongs.
Really?
Then he won a stakes right up off the top. It was funny because we were talking about this in our messaging channel with some of my coworkers and people that I do some projects with. We were talking about how tough it was on Decode to go from 6 furlong debut to win a mile and a 16th graded stakes race on this 3-year-old trail like that, and how difficult it was. And we were like racking our brains. We're like, well, when's the last horse who did it? And I'm thinking like Taba, somebody like that. And I forget it was just a couple weeks ago that Golden Tempo did it, and he didn't do it with the style you would expect, being speed from 6 furlongs and then going long. He's come from the clouds in both of them. So he's a really interesting horse. Jose Ortiz is riding there with a good post. I'll be really surprised if this race doesn't run through those 2 favorites. I think it's probably Paladin over Golden Tempo. And if it's not, then neither one of those horses are quite as good as I thought they were. And that'll be disappointing because I think they're both pretty good.
Yeah, Golden Tempo, as they say, is just one of those horses that's fun to. I got into the game, and my favorite horse at the beginning was Forgo, who came from the clouds. And yeah, comes from the clouds. They are fun horses to watch and root for, and you're always up against it, so it just makes it that much more fun. And it's going to be fun on Saturday to see Golden Temple, and again the return of Paladin. I agree, 2 very nice horses. All right, we can take maybe a quick look at the Saudi Derby, which is coming up on Saturday as well, undercard of the Saudi Cup. Because there are some American runners in here. We have 4 of them. And one of them that I'm very intrigued about, you have number 16 on your top 20 from last week, My World, who a winner of a couple of stakes in New York coming into this, the Jerome and the Nashua. And again, we talked to Brad Cox a couple of weeks ago, and I said, what the game plan with My World? He said, we're going to the Saudi Derby, like the configuration, the setup. I pulled up a replay, though, of Obliteration winning the Renaissance down at Oaklawn on January 3rd. I think he's interesting, too. Nice little U.S. contingent. But My World and Obliteration are interesting to me on Saturday.
Yeah, they're both fast, and it's a question of like how far they'll want to go. Saudi Derby is a 1-turn race, so that helps in these sprinters trying to stretch out. It's $1.5 million around 1 turn. I mean, these horses are never going to see this in their career. 1.5 million, just 3-year-olds around 1 turn. I don't think there's a race anywhere close to that, right? I mean, the purse for the Jerkins isn't anywhere near $1.5 million. And that's probably the best 1-turn race for just 3-year-olds that we'll see at Saratoga this summer. So this is one of those, if you've got a good sprint miler type horse, it's hard to pass up, in the 3-year-old ranks. And so, they're going to take the trip there. I don't know if they're Derby horses. I think the credentials for My World were solid, but I think going here kind of admits a little bit that they're not in a hurry to go long with it. Brad Cox hasn't had the greatest results so far with some of his other named horses, I mean, I think his middle distance horses have done well, but the return by Cannoneer, I think, was disappointing to him. Slow to return for Further Ado, like you had mentioned. So again, it becomes need, right? If he wins at 1 1/8, they'll say, look, he's one of our better 3-year-olds. Let's take a shot. We bring him back to the U.S. and we see what we can do with him. There are qualifying points in the Derby, in the Saudi Derby now, so that's important. I'm going to give you a horse, though, I really want to watch in this race, and it's not one of the Americans in here. The horse is from Japan named Best Green. And the reason I want to check out Best Green is he started off his career winning 4 in a row and then finished 3rd in his next start. It's the horse he finished 3rd to, who I think is going to be the best horse to come out of Japan this year, a horse named Pyromancer. Godolphin owns Pyromancer. This horse stopped the 4-race win streak of Best Green last time out in Japan. And if this horse can go internationally, the horse who couldn't beat Pyromancer, if he can come to Saudi Arabia on a neutral field and run with these good American sprinter milers, I think it's going to flatter the form there a lot of Pyromancer. So I'm really looking forward to seeing that one. The horse, the result of this, how Best Green runs in the Saudi Derby is going to give me a little bit of feel. We've had a little luck the past couple of years identifying the right Japanese horses to come over. Forever Young, Luxor Cafe last year. We were kind of early in the mix on Countdown to the Crown back in like January, February, saying these are the 2 Japanese horses the past couple of years that you want to keep your eye on. And I think Pyromancer is the one this year for Godolphin from Japan. So let's see what Best Green does in this race.
I like it. And you can't get past the Japanese runners internationally. What the past 3 or 4 years, they've been very productive shipping out and in the Middle East included. So I like that. Jeremy, as always, appreciate it. Covered a lot of ground. It was fun, great information. And we will be rooting for some of the plays this weekend and beyond. And of course, we'll talk again.
All right. Around the world and back this week, Seth.
Absolutely. Thanks for stopping by.
Sometimes it pays to go with the flow, to check your worries at the door, to reconnect with your crew, to follow the thrills and the flavor, to roll with it and see where it takes you, to enjoy every minute to its fullest, and to dance like there's no tomorrow. You can do that here at Rivers Casino and Resort Schenectady, where the good times flow.
You like free money? Well, Capital OTB gives its players plenty of opportunities to cash in. At Capital OTB, there are so many ways for horse players to receive bonus dollars by simply participating in promotions such as our bankrolls, bounty bets, online handicapping contests, and much, much more. Plus, with Capital OTB's Player Rewards program, you get actual cash back. So what are you waiting for? Log on today at CapitalOTB.com or CapitalOTBBet.com and claim your free money.
Come on.
I want sales reports on my desk by Monday.
Oops, my bad.
Love racing? RTN brings you every live simulcast on your home television, plus live video streaming and race replays on your PC and mobile devices. To order, visit rtn.tv. RTN, a breed apart.
Great conversation with Jeremy Plonk. Again, Derby Deep Dive, our weekly look at the steps along the trail to the Kentucky Derby and the Triple Crown. And again, always useful to talk to Jeremy Plonk, who does Countdown to the Crown. You can find that horseplayernow.com, Jeremy Plonk at Substack. And it's going to be interesting to see where he places on this week's top 20, where he places some of the horses we talked about, like Silent Tactic, Renegade, Plutarch. And typically, the Countdown to the Crown package, Jeremy puts it out typically, I would say, early afternoon on Friday. But it'll be fun to check it out this week, see where some of those horses wind up on the top 20. Also, going to be intrigued to watch his thoughts in the Saudi Derby tomorrow. Best Green, the Japanese runner. I'll take a look at that one. Speaking of the Saudi Cup card, it's early tomorrow morning. Again, we have it going on the network this morning as well, on this Friday morning. But tomorrow, it'll be Saudi Cup card itself with the Saudi Derby included, some other nice undercard stakes. A lot of American entrants are over there, including in the Saudi Derby and the Saudi Cup. Nisos, Nevada Beach, Rattle and Roll. The Clubhouse Racebook will open early tomorrow, so you can swing by and check out all the action here at the Racebook, 711 Central Avenue in Albany, early tomorrow to catch that Saudi card, or just tune in here on the network as well. Did want to note before I wrap up some sad news from yesterday. John Sheriffs passed away. Trainer John Sheriffs. I was surprised to learn he was 80 years old. He was here last summer with Baeza for big 3-year-old action at Saratoga, and I had a chance to interview him. I did not realize he was 80. He looked great and seemed in good health, but passed away in his sleep, as was reported. And there's a nice article in the Racing Forum by Steve Anderson kind of going over the career of John Sheriffs, known for Zenyatta, certainly one of the all-time greats and one of the horses that really, I think, probably pulled a lot of people into the game with her running style and her record. So John Sheriffs, the man behind Zenyatta, and won the 2005 Kentucky Derby with Giacomo as well. But John Sheriffs passed away yesterday, day before. It was yesterday, I think, at age 80. So again, condolences to his family. All right, that's Derby Deep Dive. Again, every Friday right here on the network. If you don't get a chance to watch it live here on the network, tune in via our Capital OTB YouTube channel. As again, every week we'll take a look at steps along the Derby Trail, preview and review some of the 3-year-olds, as I say, to watch or maybe to take off your list, given some of the performances. But we'll be back next Friday with more Deep Dive. See you then. We'd like to thank Gulfstream Park for their sponsorship of this program and some of the other programming and events here at Capital OTB. Gulfstream Park's championship meet features great racing now through Florida Derby weekend at the end of March.
You're watching OTB TV, a service of Capital Off-Track Betting.